What's up, everyone? Let's do some apologetics. So today we're going to talk about the beginning of the universe, and I want to finish the cosmological argument. We started it last week. We talked about the first premise, and now we're going to talk about the second premise. So the cosmological argument goes like this. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So we talked about that last week. Premise 2. The universe began to exist. Conclusion, therefore, the universe has a cause. Einstein, around about in the 1900s, 1916, Einstein came up with a theory of general relativity. And people working with that model discovered that if his theory was true, then it would demand that the universe had a beginning, and that all space and matter and time began at this singular moment. Einstein later said, because of the implications of this, because of the implications of there being maybe a cause to all of this, Einstein said that the results of his findings were, quote, irritating, because he saw that things that began to exist need a cause. And what actually he did in his equations in order to kind of get around this idea of a universe beginning is he did some mathematical juggling. Einstein actually later on in his life reflected back on that, putting the fudge factor in, and said it was one of the greatest blunders of his life. So instead of really looking at the universe in an unbiased way, he had a bias that got in the way, and he tried to explain away that cause. Einstein's mathematical dishonesty didn't last long. In 1922, Alexander Friedman, who was a Russian mathematician at the time, exposed Einstein's constant, or fudge factor, as an algebraic error. Alexander Friedman and George Lemaitre actually used the theory of general relativity to predict that the universe was expanding. It's hard to imagine this, but nebulae and all the different galaxies aren't necessarily flying into space. They're not flying apart in space. What's actually happening is space itself is expanding. Next, in 1927, Edwin Hubble, you probably heard of him. He's the guy that the Hubble telescope is named after. He went to the Mount Wilson Observatory. It's a big, huge 100-inch telescope. And he actually observed that distant galaxies were redder than they should be. Let me explain this. Light is actually a wavelength. So if you look at it, it's kind of like this, right? It's a wave. If you stretch a light wave, it turns redder. If you compact a light wave, it turns bluer. So what was happening that Edwin Hubble was observing was that distant galaxies were flying away from the telescope, or the light that was being emitted from the galaxies, and the light was being stretched. So the light was actually redder than it should be. This is called redshift. And what Hubble discovered is that wherever he looked in the night sky, every single galaxy was moving away from us. So what could that mean? Well, this means that the entire universe, wherever you're looking, is expanding. Okay, so what I'm going to do to illustrate this point is draw lots of little dots on this balloon. And this is going to simulate the galaxies close together, right? Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but you see all the little dots that I drew on this thing? So what Hubble was seeing was all of the galaxies and nebula and everything that he could see in the night sky was moving away from him. Just like when I blow up this balloon, all of these dots, when close together, will actually move away from each other. So check this out. Watch me blow up a balloon. You could see that all of these dots actually moved away from each other. So that's actually what's happening with the universe. This is what Hubble saw. So what's the point, Adam? Why draw on a balloon? Well, of course, theoretically, if everything is expanding, if the universe is expanding and everything's going away from each other, then if we do time in reverse, so actually collapse the universe or replay time, everything goes back into something smaller than an atom and then nothing. That was my mic drop. There's actually more evidence for the beginning of the universe from philosophy. I'm just going to talk about one more from science, and that's from the second law of thermodynamics, or also known as entropy, which says that everything will tend to disorder. And it says that the universe will end in heat death. Imagine your car full of gas, right? And if you turn it on and walk out to your car, it's going to run for a certain amount of time. But eventually, that car will run out of gas. The same thing with the universe. It's running on energy. It's running on gas. And eventually, the universe will use up all of its energy, and it will die. It will die in heat death. So there will be no more heat. It will all be cold, and that's it. The moral of the story is, if it is burning gas, which it is, or it is using energy, which it is, then why hasn't it gone out already? So we know that the universe must have had a beginning and that's the only reason why we can experience stars in the night sky and really have life here on Earth. So we know in the finite past, the universe had to have a beginning. So in the last few years, the evidence for an ultimate beginning has only gotten stronger and stronger. And I'm only citing a little bit of the evidence here. But I want you to hear from scientists. What are they saying about this beginning of the universe? Robert Jastrow, who's a prestigious astronomer who now sits in Hubble's chair at the Mount Wilson Observatory, says this: astronomers now have painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an active creation, which you can trace the seeds of every star, every planet, every living thing in the cosmos and on Earth. And they have found that all this happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. That there are what I or anyone else would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. How amazing. And this is a self-proclaimed agnostic, I believe. Nobel winner and cosmologist George Smoot said this: certainly there was something to set it all off. Certainly, if you are religious, I can't think of a better theory of the origin of the universe to match with Genesis. Amazing that thousands of years ago, the Bible got it right. The universe needs a cause for its existence. So let's go through the cosmological argument one more time. Premise 1 is, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. And then conclusion, therefore the universe has a cause. So what could cause something? It must be a personal force, because impersonal forces like abstract numbers or concepts don't have any ability to change things. They can't do anything to the world around us. Only personal causes can make a choice to act upon a system. And we know this cause had to be infinitely powerful. We also know this mind or this thing had to be infinite or outside of time in order to get time started. I can keep going on, but I think that fits the God of the Bible. I would love to hear in the comments below if you ever use the cosmological argument. So, hope your day goes well, and looking forward to engaging with you in the comments. So God bless.